Welcome back. If Monday's episode hit differently than you'd expected, if it felt less like, that's someone else's story, and more like, actually, that's my Tuesday, good. That means we're in the right place. Today, we're going into the science of maintaining high performance, but without burnout. And I need you to hear this clearly before we start. Whilst these things might help, I am not going to tell you to meditate, to take more baths, or download a breathing app. I am, however, going to tell you what is actually happening in your brain and your body when you perform at high levels without adequate recovery, and why the science points to a completely different solution than the one the self-care industry keeps selling. Welcome back to Unshakable Her, helping ambitious women who are constantly second-guessing themselves to build the daily habits that compound into unshakable confidence. I'm Caroline Esterson, and I'm in your corner. Today it's Wednesday, which means it's time for the science of what's holding you back. Because frankly, just believing yourself isn't going to get you the promotion, the pay rise, or the influence. But understanding what's actually happening in your head and why turns what's wrong with me into, that's what's happening. That's how unshakable confidence gets built. Let's go. Here's what you'll get from today's episode. 1. The neuroscience of what chronic overperformance without rest actually does, not just to how you feel, but to how well you actually perform. 2. The research on why high performers are specifically vulnerable to burnout in a way that low performers simply aren't, and why that's a trap, not a compliment. And 3, the evidence for what sustainable high performance actually looks like and why it involves doing significantly less than you think. Let's get into it. The science bit, because facts beat fear every time. So, I want to start today by talking about your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that's responsible for strategic thinking, decision-making, complex problem-solving, and emotional regulation. This is your highest performance cognitive resource. It is also, of all your brain regions, the most metabolically expensive to run. And it has a very specific relationship with rest. Research from Matthew Walker at UC Berkeley and his work on sleep and cognitive performance shows that sleep deprivation, chronic stress, and sustained mental load without recovery doesn't just make you tired. These impair prefrontal function in ways that are measurable, significant, and crucially, invisible to the person experiencing them. And here's the truly alarming bit. The more sleep-deprived and cognitively depleted you are, the less accurately you can assess your own impairment. Yep, you are worse at noticing you're struggling the more you're struggling. Crazy, right? Which means the Jess who thought she was performing fine, managing everything, delivering consistently, trusted completely, may just have been making decisions with meaningfully compromised cognitive function. And because she was Jess and Jess delivers, no one noticed, including Jess. There's a concept in occupational psychology called effort-reward imbalance. The idea that sustained high effort without proportionate reward or recovery creates chronic physiological stress. And here's where it gets specific for high performers. People who are genuinely good at their jobs, people like Jess, tend to cope better with pressure than their colleagues. They absorb more, they adapt faster, they manage the appearance of struggle more effectively, which means they hit the wall later and harder because they've been running at a level that a less capable person couldn't have sustained. So by the time the warning signs are undeniable, the deficit is much larger. High performance without recovery isn't neutral. It is a debt, and the interest compounds. The Sunday dread isn't weakness. It's the invoice arriving undeniably. So here's the reframe that the science actually supports and that most organisations haven't caught up to yet. The research on elite performers from sports psychology, from neuroscience, from organisational behaviour consistently shows that the differentiator between people who sustain high performance over years and people who burn out isn't talent. It's not work ethic. It's not even resilience in the conventional sense. It's recovery, specifically deliberate recovery, not collapse at the weekend recovery, not I'll rest when it's quieter recovery, scheduled, protected, non-negotiable recovery built into the rhythm of that high performance. Anders Ericsson, whose work on expert performance is foundational in this field, found that elite performers in every domain from music to chess to sport don't actually practice more hours than good performers. They practice with more intensity, in shorter bursts, with deliberate recovery in between. The rest isn't the break from the work. The rest is part of the work. Jess's shower problem solving on day 11 wasn't a coincidence. It was her default mode network, the brain's background processing system, which only activates fully during rest, doing the work that her overloaded conscious mind had been blocking. We talk about this more in episode 66 if you want to refer back. Jess didn't get smarter by resting. She got access to the intelligence that she already had. Not the club, just bad processes. The system's the problem, not you. Let's fix it for you and the next one in. So let's talk about the system for a moment. We mentioned this on Monday, but I want to be really very direct with you about something. Burnout is not an individual failing. The research is consistent. The primary drivers of burnout are things like increased workload, lack of control, insufficient rewards, poor community, unfairness, and values mismatch. These are organizational and systemic factors. They're not fixed by an individual deciding to be more resilient. If you are in burnout or heading there, some of what you need is a personal strategy, and we'll give you that on Friday. But some of what is happening to you is being done to you by a culture that has decided your sustainability is your problem. And let's talk about boundaries here, because this is where it gets sneaky. Have a look at your job description. I bet there's a line somewhere near the bottom that says something like, and any other duties your manager deems necessary. That little catch-all, you know the one? That's the trapdoor. Over time, that one sentence is how boundaries get quietly eroded and people end up doing 3 jobs for the price of 1. And, let's be honest here. We encourage it, don't we? I encourage it. I know that stretching beyond your remit is one of the fastest ways to build transferable skills and get yourself seen for the next move. That part is real. But, and this is the bit that nobody really talks about, you have to be the one who's clear about what's okay and what's not okay, because no one else is going to draw that line for you. Saying yes to everything isn't ambition. It's a fast track to the thing that we're talking about today. It's a fast track to burnout. And while we're on this subject, if you lead people, if you're the person that set the norms, if you model behavior, if you decide what gets rewarded and what gets ignored, you have the power to make that cultural difference, not by mandating yoga on Tuesdays, by actually protecting people's recovery time, by not emailing them at 9 o'clock at night, by measuring output, not hours, by making I'm at capacity a sentence someone can say without it affecting how they're perceived. That's not soft. That's how you keep your best people. That's how you maintain high performance in your team and in you. So let's move on to think about just one thing that you can do right now that starts to make that 2 millimeter difference for you. That one thing is the shift from treating recovery as something you earn, maybe after the deadline, after the project, or after things quiet down, to treating it as something that you schedule in advance, non-negotiably, not as a reward, but as a requirement. It looks a little bit like this. If you have a high stakes meeting, program in recovery time straight afterwards. Give yourself 20 minutes before you rush off to the next thing. That 20 minutes will help you reset. 2 millimeters built into the rhythm of your week, every week. That's all it takes. So that's Wednesday done. The prefrontal cortex, the high performer trap, and recovery as part of performance, not a break from it. Friday, Oh boy, we're bringing it all together. We have Alicia Keys, 3 moves for the long game, and the moments this all becomes something you can actually use. See you Friday. That's it for today. Before you go, if something in this episode made you think, that's why I do that, hit follow wherever you're listening, because that moment of recognition, that's where Unshakable starts. Remember, I'm in your corner. See you Friday.